Titanic, the real reason it sank, a tale of engineering blunders, hubris, and icy fate. When we think of the Titanic, many of us recall a tragic love story set against a backdrop of luxury and loss. Yet beyond the Hollywood myth lies a far more complex and, ironically, almost comical chain of errors. Rather than being undone solely by a rogue iceberg, the unsinkable Titanic was undone by a perfect storm of poor design choices, human overconfidence, and outdated safety practices. Let's set sail on a factual voyage through these missteps, peppered with a dash of humor along the way. A floating palace built on shaky foundations, Titanic was the epitome of early 20th century engineering marvels. At 269 meters in length and boasting a gross tonnage of over 46,000 tons, it was designed to be a floating palace for the rich and hopeful immigrants alike. The ship's grandeur, complete with lavish first-class dining halls, ornate staircases, and elegant lounges, earned it the nickname Unsinkable. But here's the rub. A palace built on water can be magnificent in theory, yet utterly disastrous if its blueprint is flawed. In this case, the Titanic was engineered to inspire awe, but behind the opulence lurked a series of critical oversights. Imagine spending millions to create a mansion that looks like a dream, only to find out that the foundation is as stable as a house of cards in a wind tunnel. Sedaton. Design flaws. When aesthetics trumps safety, the watertight compartment conundrum, Titanic's designers boasted that its 16 watertight compartments, divided by bulkheads meant to prevent catastrophic flooding, would keep the ship afloat even if several were breached. In theory, if up to 4 compartments flooded, the vessel would remain buoyant. However, a collision with an iceberg resulted in water cascading into 5 compartments, overwhelming the safety system. Humorously put, it was like designing a submarine that can tolerate 4 leaks, only to discover that nature had a 5th unwanted trick up its sleeve. Bulkheads built for beauty, not bravery. Aesthetic considerations also played a fatal role. To accommodate sweeping grand staircases and elegant public areas, the bulkheads, the walls between compartments, were built too low. Rather than rising high enough to contain surging water, these partitions allowed the ocean to spill from one compartment into the next, like water running through a poorly sealed bathtub. It's as if the architects thought, who needs high walls when you have gorgeous marble steps? The rivet riddle. Another glaring error was the use of substandard rivets in key sections of the hull. These rivets, which acted like the metal glue holding the ship together, were not robust enough to withstand the tremendous forces exerted during the iceberg collision. When the ship struck the iceberg, these feeble rivets failed, almost like using paper clips to hold together a load-bearing structure, allowing the hull plates to separate and water to flood in at an alarming rate. Lifeboats. The fatally inadequate fancy feature. Despite its enormous capacity to carry over 2,200 souls, Titanic was equipped with only 20 lifeboats, barely enough for about 1,178 people. This shortage wasn't merely a miscalculation, it was the direct result of outdated maritime regulations and a misguided desire to maintain the ship's sleek, uncluttered appearance. Picture this: a sumptuous dinner party with a stunning venue, but with chairs for only half the guests. The visual appeal was prioritized over the very real need for survival gear, contributing decisively to the tragedy when the unthinkable occurred. Communication chaos, when the wireless went awry. In the early 1900s, Titanic was state-of-the-art in maritime communications, boasting a cutting-edge Marconi wireless system. Yet rather than serving as a vigilant guardian, the wireless operators were often preoccupied with sending personal messages and handling routine passenger communications. As iceberg warnings filtered in from other ships, these vital alerts were largely ignored or mishandled. Moreover, the nearby vessel SS Californian, which might have been able to assist, had its radio turned off due to miscommunication and lax protocols. It's a bit like ignoring a text from your friend warning you of a huge pothole ahead while you're too busy chatting about last night's party until you're stuck in a ditch. The fatal collision, a dance with death on ice. On the fateful night of April 14, 1912, Titanic plowed into an iceberg while sailing at nearly full speed. The impact, while not creating one enormous gash, instead produced a series of smaller breaches along the ship's starboard, right side. This resulted in water flooding into the compartments at an unprecedented rate. The ship's design assumed that if water invaded only up to 4 compartments, it would remain afloat. Instead, the breach of a 5th compartment set off a cascade, each compartment's flooding leading inexorably to the next, a domino effect that ensured the ship's ultimate doom. Think of it as a leaky bucket that was supposed to be patched with rubber seals. But the seals were so flimsy that the holes just multiplied until the bucket, no matter how fancy, sank under its own weight. Human error and overconfidence. the icy hubris. The Titanic disaster was not simply the result of natural forces, but was compounded by human folly. Captain Edward J. Smith and his crew were so enamored with the ship's modern design and touted invincibility that they maintained an imprudently high speed through iceberg-laden waters. Despite repeated iceberg warnings, the decision was made not to slow down, a choice reflecting a dangerous overconfidence in both the ship's design and their own abilities. In the ensuing chaos, lifeboat lowering was delayed and poorly managed, with many boats being launched partially empty. The lack of coordinated emergency protocols meant that precious minutes were lost while life-saving equipment sat idle. It's akin to driving a brand new sports car at breakneck speed on an icy road while confidently ignoring every caution sign, only to find yourself in an unavoidable crash. Lessons learned. Reforms born from tragedy. In the wake of the Titanic disaster, the maritime world was forced to reckon with its errors. International regulations underwent sweeping reforms. Lifeboat requirements. Ships are now mandated to carry lifeboats for every passenger and crew member, eliminating the kind of deadly aesthetic compromises that plagued Titanic. Enhanced communication protocols. Modern vessels boast sophisticated, always-on communication systems with strict protocols to ensure that emergency warnings are prioritized over trivial messages. Improved structural standards. Advances in materials science and engineering have led to more rigorous standards for bulkhead construction and rivet quality. Titanic's legacy is the ultimate cosmic reminder that even the mightiest claims of unsinkability must be tempered by a healthy dose of common sense and proper safety measures. Conclusion. A tragic symphony of errors. The sinking of the Titanic was not a simple case of a ship hitting an iceberg. It was a tragic symphony of engineering miscalculations, human overconfidence, and critical lapses in communication. The combination of aesthetically driven design choices, low bulkheads and inadequate rivets, an insufficient number of lifeboats, and the failure to heed iceberg warnings created a disaster where nature's chill finally proved mightier than man's ambition. If Titanic were built today, it might sport an array of modern safety features, from advanced sensor networks to redundant emergency protocols, accompanied by a tongue-in-cheek disclaimer. Caution, may still encounter icebergs, proceed with care. In the end, the Titanic reminds us that even the most impressive engineering feats can be undone by a cascade of small yet fatal oversights, and that sometimes, no matter how grand the design, nature always finds a way to deliver a frosty reality check. This account, rooted in the well-documented analyses of maritime experts and historical records, underscores that the true story behind the Titanic's sinking is a multifaceted lesson in why engineering excellence must always be coupled with rigorous safety practices. And that's a wrap, folks. If you enjoyed our wild ride through Titanic's fatal flaws and engineering mishaps, hit that like button, drop your wittiest comment below, and subscribe for more hilariously informative deep dives. Remember, if even the unsinkable can go down with a series of epic oopsies, we might all be in for a laugh.